We began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz. And the way Shabbos Mevorchim is arranged, it's always that while we are still in the previous month, we give the bracha into the new month. And this is so regarding every Shabbos Mevorchim. And as the Rebbe stressed, when we are about to end the outgoing month, which means that we have already accomplished all the inyanim in the month which we are going out of. That is when we have the koyach to give bracha in the month which we are entering, which we are about to enter. This is so regarding every single month. This month in particular, we are now standing in the month of Sivan. And from the month of Sivan, we are giving bracha into Tammuz. What is the month of Sivan? The month of Sivan is the month of Matan Torah. Yalchot Lisoi, the third month, when we count from Nisan, Sivan is the third month, and that is the month when Torah was given. In fact, now we are 3 Shabbosim. This is the third Shabbos from Shavuos, which is again an union of 3. We saw it in the Gemara, where the Gemara discusses that Matan Torah wasn't the third month. Matan Torah was in the month of Sivan. There the Gemara uses several expressions how Torah is tied in with number of 3. It wasn't the month of the third. It was given to a nation that consists of 3. Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. Torah is composed of 3 major parts. Torah, Nevi'im, Iksuvim. So we find in Gemara also the stress regarding Torah, how Torah has to do with number 3. The Rebbe is pointing out today, especially now, that we are 3 Shabbosim from Matan Torah. And Shabbos also has a special shaykhus to Torah. Why? Because the Gemara tells us that everyone agrees, Kula al memoida, to be Shabbos nitna Torah, that when did the Rebbe to give Torah, it was on a Shabbos. Furthermore, if we look in Chumash, we don't find that Chumash should mention the date of Matan Torah. Chumash only tells us in what month it was. And that is why in Gemara there's taka machlokes between Tanoim on what day the Torah was given, whether the 5th of Sivan or the 6th of Sivan. If it would be spelled out beferish in Chumash, then there wouldn't be room for such a machlokes. Why is this? Because the Torah in Chumash, the Torah attributes it, the Torah was given in the third month. B'chodesh hashlishi, the Torah says, B'yoyim hazeh bo midbar Sinai. It was on this day the Yidden arrived to Midbar Sinai. What day was that? That was the day of Rosh Chodesh. And as the Alter Rebbe explains in the famous Maimah on Torah Oyer, that the pasuk does not say specifically which day. Pasuk just says b'chodesh hashlishi b'yoyim hazeh. But Chazal derive what is the pshat in b'yoyim hazeh. B'yoyim hazeh means the day of Rosh Chodesh. That is when the Yidden have arrived to Sinai, and after spending a few days in Sinai and following all the instructions which we got from the Rebishter, that is when the Rebishter gave the Torah. What is the inyan of hazeh? Hazeh has a special shaykhus to Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a Rambam. The Rambam discusses the inyan of Nevuah. And the Rambam brings out that in Nevuah there are many, many levels. General, Nevuah means when the Navi is relating a Dvar Hashem, a message of the Rebishter. Dvar Hashem diber boy, umilosay al lishoynei. On his tongue are the words of Hashem. However, in Nevuah there are many, many levels, the Rambam tells us. And for us to put it in 2 general terms, there's a difference if a Navi uses the expression koi, or if a Navi uses the expression zeh. What is the difference? The difference is very simple. Zeh is an expression, as Chazal explained, Mare be'etzboi v'oimer zeh. When one points with his finger and points on something and says, Zeh, this is it. This is how this thing will be. Which Navi expressed his nevuah with zeh, that was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah were an expression of zeh, precise and clear, relating the words of Hashem. Exactly. Zeh, kozeh rei v'kadesh, there's an expression in Chazal, which is again the stress, this is it exactly. However, all other Nevi'im, how did they relate Nevuah? Their relating Nevuah was an expression of koi. Koi Yomar Hashem, we always find in Navi. What is the expression of koi? Koi is already, the Rambam uses the expression, I think it's in the Rambam, there's an aspaklaria ha-me'ira, and aspaklaria she'ena me'ira. This expression is also often quoted in Chassidus. There is a shining light which we could see straight through it. Aspaklaria ha-me'ira. This is the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's a nevuah that begins with the words zeh. There's a aspaklaria she'ena me'ira. There is a light. It's taka a light. It's taka lichtigkeit. However, it is not shining. The lichtigkeit is there, aber es ist nicht mehr. This is compared to all the other Nevi'im whose nevuah is related in koi. In other words, they are relating the Dvar Hashem, but in no way can their vision be compared to the vision of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's vision was a clear and exact, precise vision. However, the vision of all other Nevi'im is a Nevi'im of koi. Getting back to our Inyan, to the Inyan of Matan Torah. By Matan Torah we find the expression of zeh. B'chodesh hashlishi b'yoyim hazeh. Because the whole Gilui of Matan Torah, which the Rebbeinu revealed himself to Yidden, is compared to the Gilui of zeh. Clear and precise, a Gilui of an aspaklaria ha'ma'ira, like a shining light, a shining lichtigkeit. And here we say that the giving of Torah was when he in Yachet Lisor, in the month of the third month, in the month of Sivan. So what does this really stress? That the entire month has a Shaykhas to Matan Torah. Being that the Torah does not spell out exactly on what day the Torah was given. But all the Torah stresses is the month, is a siman that the entire month has this special inyan, Yachet Lisor. It's a special month, to the fact. Why is it special? Because Torah was given in that month, and now we are standing in this special month of Sivan, and we are giving bracha into time. And that is as far as the Shabbos Mavor. A little more specific is today's Sedra. Today's Sedra is Parsha Shelach. We were to ask anyone, what is the name of the Sedra? They will tell you Shelach. They wouldn't tell you Shlach Lecha, which is the second word which comes together with Shlach. However, there's really a major difference between Shlach and Shlach Lecha. What does Rashi tell us? Rashi explains Shlach Lecha, and he says that the Rebbe told Moshe Rabbeinu, Ledaitecha. He's leaving it up to Moshe. Moshe should make the decision whether to send Meraglim or not to send Meraglim. If we were to learn Shlach is the Taich. The Rebbe is telling Moshe the mitzvah. Shlach Shikse. When we are saying Shlach Lecha, this changes the picture entirely. The Rebbe says he's leaving it up to Moshe, that Moshe should make the decision about whether to send them or not to send them. So it was here in the Sikha where the Rebbe began to bring out, we have to understand, what was the issue with Moshe sending the Meraglim? After all, it was kind of a normal act for Moshe to do. We know in Yonim, many in Yonim al pi Torah, Torah tells us that we should follow the rules of nature, follow the rules of regular procedure. And this is the derech, that before a country is conquered, before we go into a country, we send meraglim. Furthermore, we find the same in Torah also. If we look into this week's Haftarah, what did Yeshua do before he crossed the Yarden? He also sent meraglim. So why is there something wrong
as we gather from the parasha, that the Rebishter didn't tell him to send. It was something which was left to Moshe's decision. And Moshe was the one that decided to send, and later led to problems. After all, this would have been a regular routine thing, that before we go and we conquer a country, we send Meraglim. And the Chlal Torah wants we should do things al pi teva. Here the Rebbe mentioned the famous story from the Alter Rebbe, that when the Alter Rebbe was in prison, he was once transferred from one place to another. And while he was being transferred, he had to go through a river. So he was being transferred in a boat. It was at night, and the Alter Rebbe saw the Levana, so he asked the person who was driving the boat that he should be kind enough to stop the boat so that he should be able to be Mechadish the Levana. The person refused. So what did the Alter Rebbe do? So the boat started stopping on its own. The one who was driving the boat just couldn't drive it. So when he realized that, he already understood that the Alter Rebbe is behind us. So then the Alter Rebbe asked him, he should stop the boat so that he should be able to be Mechadish the Levana. So the question arises, if the Alter Rebbe was capable to have the boat stopped through his koiches, through his strength, why did he have to come on to him to get his permission that he should stop the boat so that the Alter Rebbe will be Mechadish the Levana? And the explanation on this is a very obvious one. True that the Alter Rebbe had the koyach to stop the boat, but this was not b'derech hateva. It was not in the realm of nature. A mitzvah, a yid has to be mekayim al pi derech hateva. So the Alter Rebbe was looking for ways to convince him that he should stop the boat, but the actual being mekayim, the mitzvah of Chidush Levana, this the Alter Rebbe wanted should be b'derech hateva, al pi teva. And al pi teva, it was only when the fellow who was driving the boat would agree to stop for a couple of minutes. It didn't take that long. How long does it take to be Mechadish the Levana? And once he agreed to stop, that is when the Alter Rebbe was Mechadish the Levana. So again, what do we derive from all this? From all this we derive that how does a mitzvah have to be fulfilled? A mitzvah has to be fulfilled that we have to follow the rules of nature, the rules of teva. So getting back to Moshe Rabbeinu also, al pi teva, should have sent Meraglim. So here the Rebbe was masbir what Chassidus explains, what Alter Rebbe brings out in Likutei Torah. The Rebbe refers to Likutei Torah, the Chassidische Parsha, the Chassidic Parsha. We have Chumash, which is the regular Parsha. Then we have the Chassidische Parsha, that is the Likutei Torah or the Torah, and that's every week, whatever the case may be. In the winter months it's Torah, and from Chumash Vayikra it's Likutei Torah. And Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe brings out and explains what was really the problem with the Meraglim. And there he explains that the went wrong with the Meraglim was that the Meraglim wanted to remain in the Olam HaMachshava, the world of thought, or, as another interpretation given by the Alter Rebbe, they wanted to remain in the Olam of Dibur. But whatever explanation we should accept, what they wanted to stay away from was Mainzer. In other words, it's explained in Rebbe's Sichos from previous years, what the Meraglim really wanted, they wanted to avoid to enter Eretz Yisrael. Because once the Yidden would enter Eretz Yisrael, Yidden would be involved in a Gashmiistic day-to-day life. They'd have to take care of their fields and their vineyards, planting and growing, a Gashmiistic life. In the Midbar, they did not have that. In the Midbar, all their Gashmiistic need were provided from the Rebishter. They had man, they had water came from the well of Miriam, their clothes grew along with them, the clouds cleaned their clothes, they had no worries about any Gashmis the Kinyan. And this is the type of life that the Meraglim wanted to continue, because they thought that this is the ideal Ratzon of the Rebishter. However, this was their error, The Rotzen of the Rebishter is that a Yid should be involved in Gashmias, and Davke, through Gashmias, he should serve the Rebishter. Bechol drochecha do'eyu. In all your ways, in all your Gashmias, the Kenyanim, know him whom the Rabbeinu Shalom. In other words, whatever a Yid does, and all the Gashmias that a Yid is involved day to day, through all his Gashmias, a Yid is supposed to serve the Rebishter. And this is really what was achieved once the Yid entered Eretz Yisrael. And this was the era of the Meraglim. The Meraglim's era was that they did not think that this is the ideal derech of Avodas Hashem. They wanted to live a derech of Ruchnias, a life of Ruchnias, not having to do with anything of Mainse, with a Machshava or Dibur, but to get involved in Inyanim of Mainse. This is what they wanted to stay away from. But brought out further that when the Meraglim went, they all went as emissaries of Moshe Rabbeinu. Being that the Rebishter told Moshe, Shlach lecha l'daitecha, that he's leaving it up to Moshe. So once Moshe sent them, they went with this strength, with this koyach of being shluchah shalodam kemoisei of whom of Moshe Rabbeinu. If they would go stam as a mitzvah, if the Rebishter would have told Moshe, Shlach, not Shlach lecha, just Shlach, and Moshe would have sent Meraglim, then these Meraglim, what went, wouldn't have been considered emissaries of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the truth is, Alter Rebbe brings out in Tanya, that every Yid has a nitzutz, has a spark in his neshama, a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. And by them serving as emissaries of Moshe Rabbeinu, this spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, which every Yid has, was by them revealed at a yet greater stage. Why? Because they were shluchim of Moshe Rabbeinu. Same the Rebbe brought out in Ruchnias. Torah tells us, the Rebbe keeps on stressing, what is the v'hacha yitin eliba? In other words, the heroa which we derive from this whole inyan. Same inyan, shlach lecha l'daitecha. Every Yid is given koiches, and the koiches to every Yid are channeled through the Moshe Rabbeinu of the Doh, through Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Yid is given koiches. And what does he have to do with these koiches? Shlach lecha. Send them. Send out your koiches. In other words, a Yid is supposed to activate his strength which the Rebishter has given him. Shlach lecha. And where should the Shlach lecha be reflected? Dafke in the Olam HaMaisa. That's what we're saying. The Meraglim wanted to stay away from Mainse. They only wanted to serve the Rebishter through the level of Machshav and Dibur. What is the Hero to us now? That a Yid is given koiches. And these koiches he has to utilize and spread out. Shlach lecha. Shikis avoy. Send it out of yourself. In other words, reach out to wherever you can. And this is given to every Yid. And it's channeled through Moshe Rabbeinu. And again, the Moshe Rabbeinu, which is in every Yid having the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. Alter Rebbe brings this out in Tanya. The pasuk says, "V'ata Yisrael ma Hashem Elokecha shoyel mimach ki im li yira yisoi." What does the Rebishter ask from you? Only to fear. So the Gemara asks, "V'chi yira milse zutresehi." Fearing the Rebishter, is then this something small? The pasuk says, all the Rebishter asks of you is to fear. Is then this something small? And what does the Gemara respond? Ein. Yes. Lagabe Moshe milsa zutresehi. When we're talking regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not considered such a high madrege. So the Alter Rebbe asks in Tanya, the pasuk is said to every Yid, not only to Moshe Rabbeinu. And when we're talking about every Yid, it is something tremendous to tell every Yid, go ahead and fear the Rabbeinu Shalom. So the pasuk says, Vata Yisrael, all the Rebishter is asking from you is liyira. It's a kind of like, it's not much. So what does the Alter Rebbe respond? That there is a level of Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a nitzvah of Moshe Rabbeinu in each and every Yid. And this pasuk is addressed to every Yid. And what the Gemara says regarding Moshe, it's a milsa zutras, it's like something small. It's like a reflected to every Yid. This is giving strength to every Yid, that by every Yid should be considered something that he should have, it should be accessible to him, that he should be able to fear ois the shlichus. We made it the same when we're talking here in the union of Shlach lecha. from Inyan LeInyan, the Rebbe here again came into the Inyan of Chinuch. It's an Inyan which the Rebbe has spoken already several times regarding the obligation of parents to be mechanech children. So the question arises, we are educating children so that when a child grows up, when he or she becomes bar bas mitzvah, they should know what to do exactly. They should be able to be mekayim all the mitzvahs. This chinuch in itself is not a mitzvah. In the count of 613 mitzvahs, chinuch itself is not a mitzvah. Neither is it a mitzvah d'oraisa, neither is it a mitzvah d'rabbanan. So the question arises: how can we understand this? How does this have a rationalization? How can we explain all the mitzvahs of the Rebishter? Every detailed mitzvah goes into the minyan of mitzvahs. When we're talking about the mitzvah of chinuch, which this is kind of like the basis of all mitzvahs, one cannot be mekayim the mitzvahs unless he had chinuch, unless he was taught how to be mekayim the mitzvah. And nonetheless, we say that chinuch in itself is not one of the mitzvahs. So this the Rebbe brought out. Why is it not one of the mitzvahs? Because it's taka yet higher than the mitzvah. Mitzvahs are detailed in Yonah. There are 613 mitzvahs. This is something which stands yet higher than any one of these details. Why? Because this is the yesod, this is the fundament of all the mitzvahs. And what is this called? Rabbi says if we were to look for a terminology, how to refer to this, this is called hechsher mitzvah. Hechsher mitzvah in Gemara means preparing to a mitzvah. And the same thing, chinuch, hechsher mitzvah, is not considered a mitzvah. It's preparation to mitzvah. But nonetheless, we cannot do the mitzvah unless we had the preparation. Rabbi quoted a Rabbi Lezer HaGodl, Gemara, opinion of Rabbi Lezer HaGodl. Lezer HaGodl is, it's regarding being mal in Shabbos. Mila in Shabbos is permitted. The question is, there are various preparations that have to be made for Mila and Shabbos. How far back could we go to prepare all of these inyanim on Shabbos? So the opinion of Rabbi Lezer is that Rabbi Lezer HaGodl, that anything that only deals as a preparation to mitzvah, anything which can be defined as a hechsher mitzvah, is permitted to be done on Shabbos. To prepare to Mila, which is permitted on Shabbos. But again, what do we derive from this? From this we derive that there is a concept of hechsher mitzvah. Not everything has to be told in the frame of the 613 mitzvahs. We cannot fulfill the mitzvah unless there are preparations. The Rebbe brought another example. The Rebbe brought an example from the Akedah. The Rebbe told Avraham Avinu he should go ahead and take his son Yitzchak, Kaches binchas yechitra asher ahavta es Yitzchak, and bring him to the Akedah. If we go through the parsha, we see that in order for Avraham to fulfill the wish of Hashem, which he thought that he would have to bring him on the Mizbeach as a korban, Avraham had to take along certain gashmiistic things with him. There was need for him to take along a knife. There was need for him to take along wood, so that wood and fire, that he should be able to start a fire. All these details Avraham had to bring along with him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to fulfill the wish of Hashem. Nonetheless, the Rebishter didn't tell him to do it. We don't find that the Rebishter should tell Avraham Avinu, take along a macheles, take along a knife, and take along fire, and to make sure that you should be able to start a fire. This the Rebishter doesn't tell him. Why? Because once the Rebishter gave him the general message what to do, all the details comes in by itself. We have to understand on our own what has to be done in order to fulfill the wish of Hashem. Memele, the details, what Avraham has to bring along in order to shecht Yitzchak as a korban, this is not part of the mitzvah, the instructions which the Rebbe gave him. The same the Rebbe is saying, the fact that we have to be mechanech a person, this is hechsher mitzvah. This is in order for Avraham to be able to be mekayim the mitzvah as a hechsher mitzvah, he had to take along a knife and had to make sure that there is a mizbeach had to make sure that there is wood for him to start a fire. All these things go into the category of Hechsher Mitzvah. The same the Rebbe says when we are talking about Chinuch in general. Chinuch in general is a concept of a Hechsher Mitzvah. In order for a child or for an adult to know what to do, he or she has to be trained. Otherwise, we cannot fulfill the wish of Hashem. But at the same time, we can understand why this is not one of the 613 mitzvahs. Talking on this inyan, Rebbe also brought out that the same regarding each and every one of us. We know we have our responsibility. We don't have to be guided by our hands to be told exactly what we have to do. We know our responsibility is to be meifetz mayones Chassidus chutza, to take Chassidus and the wells of Chassidus, the wellsprings of Chassidus, and reach out with Chassidus to areas which are defined as chutza, outside areas, an area which until now Chassidus did not reach there. So one will say he doesn't know where chutza is, and he doesn't know what the mayon is, and he will wait to be directed exactly, should be shown to here this and this is the mayon and there is chutza, and be given specific instructions what to be done. This is not the right approach. If we know what our responsibility is, that we have to be meifetz the mayonis of chassidus chutza, this is what we have to do. The Rebbe mentioned of an incident that someone once came into the Frierdiker Rebbe and asked for extreme specific guidance from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So it seems like the Frierdiker Rebbe repeated it later to the Rebbe that this person wanted to be guided like a Ben Yochid, like a one and only child, and he wanted to be told exactly what has to be done. And what the Rebbe was trying to bring out of this incident, that this is not the derech. The derech is, as long as we were given the instruction, just like Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, once he had a clearing, whom the Rebbe was referring to, the Rebbe had to give him the general message. Once he had the general message from the Rebbe, then Avraham went on his own, and he followed the instructions of Hashem. Now the Rebbe says, here is an opportune time to explain an inyan which was discussed in last week's Farbrengen. In last week's Farbrengen, the Rebbe brought out regarding Aaron HaKoyen. Beginning of the Seder of last week, beginning of Pashas Ba'aloischo, we learn about Aaron that Chol Shodaitoi. Aaron's mind was kind of weakened when he saw that every Shevet had a share in the dedication of the Mishkan, and neither he and neither his Shevet Levi, did not have any share. So Rashi uses the expression Chol Shodaitoi. This created a weakness in Aaron's mind. What did the Rebbe bring out last week? The lesson which we can take from this. The lesson which we can take from this, the Rebbe brought out, is that whenever a Yid comes across an inyan which he can be beneficial to, a Yid has to volunteer and get involved in it. Anything positive which we see, which we can give a hand to, we should do it. And otherwise, if we are not doing it, then this creates a chlishas hadas, a weakness in the mind of a person. Das is what a person, when we want to say what is a person is reflected through his das. The strength of the das, or the weakness of the das, this is really how the person functions. So, what is the heroah which we take from the incident of Aaron HaKoyen, that when we see something positive done, for example, like Aaron saw the Nesiim of every tribe bringing korbanos for the dedication of the Mishkan, and seeing everybody taking part in it. And he did not see himself playing any role in the dedication of the Mishkan. What did it lead to? Chol Shadata, his mind weakened. Aaron's whole mind, Aaron's entire existence, his entire being was to be able to serve the Rebbe. And primarily through the Mishkan, through korbanos, through the Mishkan. This is what Aaron's inyan was. And when Aaron saw something major taking place in the Mishkan, and he is not being invited to it, he's not being invited to play a role in it, to take part in it, Chol Shadaita, to weaken his mind. Something must be wrong. Neither him, neither his Shevet were invited. So Aaron Aaron felt bad because Aaron thought that to the Mishkan he would definitely be one of the major people to play a role. And here he sees that he's totally ignored, he and his Shevet. As the Rebbe mentioned last week, actually, he thought maybe he was ignored because he was involved in the Egel. The whole union of the Mishkan is to bring Getlachkeit into the world, which is contrary to the union of Egel. Being that he had a share in the Egel, so he thought maybe that is why he was not given this chos to participate in the dedication of the Mishkan. However, Shevet Levi, we know, Shevet Levi was the only Shevet which does not take part in the making of the Egel. So Aaron thought maybe him takenat, he wasn't zeicher to it, but why wasn't the Shevet zeicher? And here he sees, this is why Rashi stresses, and Pashas Balois brought out last week, Loi hu v'loi shiftoi. Neither him, neither a Shevet. What did a Shevet do wrong? A Shevet definitely didn't do anything wrong. Why weren't they invited to take part in the dedication of the Mishkan? So Chol Shadaita. So it led to a weakening of the Das of Aaron. And as the Rebbe brought out, the Heroy from this is that whenever a Yid sees an Inyan going on, an Inyan Toiv, a proper Inyan, a good Inyan, a positive Inyan, which is taking place, a Yid always has to volunteer and see to it that he's also taking part in it. This is the toikef hadas of a person, the strength of the mind of a person, which is contrary to the weakened mind. When a person responds, when he sees positive things and ideal things going on. But it says, based on that, based on this whole explanation which he gave last week, the question arises, why don't we participate in the learning of Daf Yomi? We went back that this was founded many years ago by G'dolei Yisrael. There are many Yidden that accepted it, and by us we see that we did not accept the Inyan of learning Daf Yomi daily. The Rebbe says it seems from the Frierdiker Rebbe, this was founded in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe, it seems from the Frierdiker Rebbe that being that he did not join in other words, join along with the G'dolim who proclaimed Daf Yomi, that the Frierdiker Rebbe was also not in favor of it. The question arises: how does this come in line how does this come in light of the explanation which we just brought out, that whenever a Yid sees something positive, he should join in? What is said that originally, when Daf Yomi came out, there were many G'dolei Yisrael that were not in favor of it. Why was the reason not to be in favor of it? Because Bechlau, Torah has to be learned. You have to leave it up to the person who's learning Torah, that he should choose what he wants to learn. You can't force a limud on a person and tell him you must learn in such a way so that every day you learn a blat Gemara. The Gemara tells us, La'olam yilmeid adam b'machem sheli bechafetz. A person should always learn where his heart desires. So you can't come to a person and tell him, listen, you have to learn a Masechta, and today you'll learn one blat, and tomorrow the next blat, and then the third blat, and so forth. May not be desirable to the person, to the Adam Haloimeh. The person's supposed to be given a free hand to learn Torah wherever his desire is. The Rebbe brought out Tifa. When did Aaron complain? It wasn't after he saw one Shevet or two Shvatim, 2 or 3 leaders of Shvatim bring Karbonis, and then he would complain, why isn't he bringing a Karban? This wasn't what happened by Aaron. When Aaron saw something which all of the Nesiya Yisrael took part in, every Nasi of every tribe took part and by bringing a Karban in the dedication of the Mishkan, and he didn't. That is what bothered him. When did Aaron get his Chlishas Hadas? It wasn't on the second day, it wasn't on the third day, or on the fourth day. It wasn't until after full 12 days passed. In other words, he saw something which is being done by all Nasiya Yisrael. Every Nasi Yisrael agreed to it, that now is a time to have a part, to take part, to participate in the dedication of the Mishkan. And he is not taking part. This led to Chol Shaddai. But we referred, this is regarding the learning of Daf Yomi. There is also the learning of Yerushalmi. There are those that learn Daf Yomi not on our Shas, is the Bavli Shas, the Babylonian Shas. Recently it was introduced by the Gerer Rebbe quite a few years ago, in order that people should have an opportunity to familiarize themselves with Yerushalmi. So he introduced the concept of learning Daf Yomi on Yerushalmi. Every day a page of Yerushalmi. Rabbi said again, this is something which was introduced take by a Nasi Yisrael. In fact, several years ago when they had the first siyum of Daf Yomi Yerushalmi, it was a very warm letter of greeting which the Rebbe sent to the occasion. It was taka introduced by a Nasi Yisrael, but again it cannot be compared to the incident of Chol Shaddai of Aaron, because Chol Shaddai of Aaron, there it was something which all the Nasi Yisrael want to know. It says, after this entire explanation, question is going to arise, what's about learning Rambam? Why is learning Rambam any different than learning Daf Yomi, whether in Bavli or in Yerushalmi? Rabbi says, first of all, the Indian of learning Rambam, it was only a suggestion from him. It came only as a suggestion. But second of all, if we want to go a little deeper, it says, we know that there's the proclamation from the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe spoke about it last week, La'alter l'tshuva, la'alter l'gula. Frierdiker Rebbe arrived here in the United States. Frierdiker Rebbe came out with a motto in the early 1940s, La'alter l'tshuva, we should immediately do tshuva. And by doing tshuva immediately, this will lead to La'alter l'gula, this will lead immediately to Geula. The Rebbe says, being that Geula did not come yet, so we are still looking for means and trying to do pa'ulos which will lead to Geula. There is a uniqueness in the Sefer HaRambam which no other Sefer has. Whether we learn 3 prakim a day or we learn 1 perek a day, the specialty with Rambam is that a Yid, when he goes through Rambam, has an opportunity to learn Kol HaTorah Kol. As the Rambam himself writes in the introduction to his Sefer, that a person can learn Chamisha Chumshei Torah, and once he has learned all of Chumash, then he can transfer to Rambam. And if a person goes through all the 14 Sfarim of Rambam, this will give him a full knowledge on Torah. The Meiler the Rebbe says, as something which should be done before the coming of Mashiach, something which is another step in leading to Bias HaMashiach, is the Indian of giving Yidden an opportunity to learn the entire Torah. And how can this be practiced? This can be practiced through learning Rambam. If I may say something, if I understand it correctly, the difference the Rebbe is bringing out between Daf Yomi and Limud HaRambam. Daf Yomi was introduced as a limud in Torah, a derech halimud in Torah. Now, this is debatable. Is this a derech halimud for everyone in Torah, or isn't this a derech halimud for everyone in Torah? The limud harambam was not introduced as another area of learning Torah. Limud HaRambam was introduced as an area which should hasten the coming of Mashiach, as another being that we are looking for all ways and means to see to it that Mashiach should come in Vashnel. Mashiach should come yet faster. So one ideal way, the Rebbe says, could also be that giving Yidden an opportunity that every Yid should become familiar in the entire Torah. This may be another area, another way which should rush the coming of Mashiach. And again, this is already something which has a shaykhus to each and every Yid. Just like Rebbe concluded in the Sikha, just like we find in davening, that there are certain parts of Torah which were put into Tefillah. As we say in the morning, we say Pashi is certain. Before Haidu, we say various Pashas from Torah. Then we have Mishnah, then we have Ezer Mekoyman, we have Rabbi Shmuel. These are parts of Torah, it's quotations of Torah. But it was, the Chachamim have arranged it, that this is equal for every Yid. Every Yid is not dependent on anybody's understanding of Torah or level of Torah. It's recited by everybody. Everybody, he only davens, says these Chalakim of Torah every day in davening as well. The same when we're talking about the Inyan of Limud HaRambam. This is something which is equivalent to everyone, and it's something equivalent to everyone, but al tzwat, it's something which comes in as part of the la'alta l'tshuva, which will lead to the la'alta l'gul. The Farbrengen, the Rebbe referred briefly to the Perek of today, Pirkei Avos, which is the third Perek. Again, an Inyan of 3, Shivas of number 3. And the third Perek begins with a quotation, Histakel b'shloisha dvarim v'ein atabola de avera. In fact, it was after Pesach, the first time we were saying Pirkei Avos, the Rebbe also explained this Mishnah. Today the Rebbe primarily raised the question, why does the Mishnah have to give an introduction? Histakel b'shloisha dvarim v'ein atabola de avera. Look into these 3 things and you wouldn't come to an avera. I mean, if we look into them, we'll see that it's 3. Every word in Mishnah is accurate. Mishnah does not just say words when they are not needed. So what's the touch? Histakel b'shloisha dvarim v'ein atabola de avera. Mishnah could have said, Histakel, and the following things, v'ein atabola de avera. Why is it negaya to know that it's 3? If we look through the Mishnah, we go through the first Mishnah of the third Perek, you see there are 3 inyan. So the Rebbe answered that this Histakel b'shloisha dvarim, this in itself is also an avodah. In other words, this comes as an introduction to the latter part of the Mishnah, but already this in itself is also bringing out an avodah of a Yid. That when a Yid thinks into 3 things, which 3? Thinks about himself, thinks about the Torah and mitzvahs which he is involved with, and that through Torah and mitzvahs he will purify the world. The world in itself is called Olam. Olam, see, this brings out, it's tied in with the word Helen. The world is a cover-up on Getlachkeit. And the world, as the world stands on its own, we do not see Getlachkeit. What is the Avodah of a Yid? The Avodah of a Yid is, into this Olam, Miloshen Helen, he should instill Getlachkeit. So what are we told? Histakel b'shloisha dvarim. When a Yid takes these 3 inyanim into account, himself, Torah, mitzvahs which go together, and the Welt, which he was sent down into the world, to illuminate the world with Torah mitzvahs, to reveal the Helen, the Hester, the cover-up which is in the world on godliness, and he fulfills his mission. When he is a Histakel b'shloisha dvarim, then it's a Natabola de Avir.